What's going on, beautiful people? It is I, your flying locomotive, and faster than a speeding bullet SuperCliff, coming at you live with a brand new video. So for today's video, I want to talk about Ahsoka Season 1. Now, I will say that I'm going to approach this video with the lens of having already seen Rebels Seasons 1 through 4. DaveFiloni, who was the main driving force behind Rebels, is also the guy who helped create the character of Ahsoka. Basically, both this show and Rebels are fairly linked. And so one can make the argument that Ahsoka Season 1 is a backdoor for Rebels Season 5. So yeah, the more you know. Therefore, without further ado, let's do this. Let's start with the positives. I think in terms of Star Wars lore and that of the Star Wars galaxy, Ahsoka does a really good job with its world building. One of my many reasons as to why I despise the sequel trilogy is the fact that the movies do very little to create something new and different.
So it's big.
That's essentially of the amount of creativeness those movies have. In terms of Ahsoka, luckily this isn't the case. The show actually provides a solid status quo for the galaxy post Return of the Jedi. Granted, we've seen what the galaxy already looks like thanks to shows like The Mandalorian, but even if you haven't watched Mando Seasons 1 through 3 or The Book of Boba Fett, you can watch this show and comprehend the world that is surrounding our characters. Post-Jedi, there's a new republic in charge, the Empire is scattered into remnants, and instead of there being a Sith Lord or a wannabe Palpatine character-esque, the main bad guy is a blue-skinned alien named GrandAdmiralThrawn, who's the only person qualified enough to unite the Empire and pose a serious threat to the entire galaxy. Also, there's a lot of Night Sister magic, different galaxies, loads of fantasy-esque mythology, and zombie stormtroopers. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. In terms of character portrayal, Rosario Dawson does a fantastic job. The way in which she looks as the character is spot on. And whenever I think about a 40-year-old Ahsoka, I can't really see anyone else playing the character besides her. When it comes to the cast playing existing characters from Rebels, whether it's the actress who plays Sabine or Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Hera, or even the actor playing Ezra, they all embody those characters from Rebels fairly well. And I can totally see the potential of their continuation as those characters moving forward. Also, the addition of new characters like BaylanSkoll, who was a fan favorite, rest in peace Ray Stevenson, ShinHati, who was truly menacing, and her eyes, like holy crap, her eyes were insane. When it comes to the tone, the show looks and feels like Star Wars. Now, what do I mean by that? Check it. Let's take a look at Andor. When it comes to Andor, I really enjoyed it. It's some of the best writing for live-action Star Wars since The Empire Strikes Back. However, my main issue with the show was that it never looked or felt like Star Wars. In a galaxy far, far away, you expect there to be a ton of aliens. And yet in Andor, it's very plain and it's mostly, human-filled. Tony Gilroy's script and the show's content, yes, he did a phenomenal job, but if you were to say that Andor wasn't a Star Wars show, then I would probably believe you, given the material. Ahsoka feels like Star Wars 100%. I mean, there's an opening crawl in red lettering. What more can you want? And despite the music not being composed by John Williams, the music by Kevin Kiner sounds like you're actually watching Star Wars. However, at the end of the day, this isn't a perfect show. So let's dive into that. Now remember, I'm talking about this season with the knowledge of already seeing Rebels. Though I like the story and the setup, the writing and the logic implemented is the show's biggest weakness. For starters, there's a very slow pace to it. A lot of scenes overstay their welcome. For example, take Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here in this scene, he's looking at the golden idol, wondering how to take it without triggering a trap. Ahsoka is doing the same thing, but here's the thing, there's no trap. We're watching Ahsoka figure something out in silence. We're doing it without any context whatsoever. Now eventually as the show unfolds, we understand what she's looking at, but still, we never feel any tension while she's doing this. She's looking around the walls for what feels like 10 minutes, whereas in Raiders, this scene takes about a minute to happen. Moments like this are just one of many scenes throughout the season where they take way too long. Also in terms of the pacing, every character interaction we have, there's always this long pause in between lines of dialogue, and it's to the point where a lot of the main characters come off extremely stoic and quite honestly boring. Now, I understand that Filoni was trying to go for a Kara Saga film approach, given that's one of the many things which inspired George Lucas to create Star Wars. However, when you're watching like a movie like A New Hope, even when it's just C-3PO and R2-D2 wandering about in the desert, things are still happening. You're never bored. You're always intrigued with what's happening on the screen. There's like this punchiness to it. There's little to no drag and every scene has a purpose for the story. Plus there's personality within those scenes. Ahsoka and everyone else, they all have the same personality. Characters talk, Characters pause before responding, and characters cross their arms. It's to the point where you're like, what is happening? Like, why is it done this way? Now, the only reason I can think of this is because they wanted to pump out as many episodes as they could. Besides that, I don't truly understand the reason. Another critique I had with the show is the manner in how the characters respond. Take Sabine, for instance. Her entire goal for this show is to find Ezra. Given what we know about their relationship during Rebels, these two have a close bond. And in episode 1 of Ahsoka, the show tells us that these two are like brother and sister. Okay, cool. However, when Sabine essentially betrays Ahsoka to save Ezra, in turn allowing Thrawn's forces to locate him and bring him back to the main Star Wars galaxy, this tells us that finding Ezra is a must for her. Yet when she finally does find him, there is no emotion. There's no reaction. The two of them just cross each other's arms and make a joke. Like, what the fuck? Bro, I saw Rebels. It's in the timeline. These two definitely would have hugged. I mean, for God's sake, Ahsoka had more of a reaction than Sabine. And Ahsoka barely has any emotion in the show whatsoever. Basically, you get a lot of scenes that they just don't execute well. And the problem is that as the story continues, you can't, go back and redo those moments. This was the show to make the moments feel earned. Ever since 2017, 2018, when Rebels ended, Thrawn and Ezra have been missing. And so the reaction of, bringing them back into the Star Wars story, it's like, wait, that was it? That was the bang? Didn't really feel earned. Now, speaking of Thrawn, I want to talk about him next. Thrawn, in my opinion, is probably one of the best characters in Star Wars. And essentially his character is that of a tactician. Like, he's the best of the best when it comes to that sort of stuff. Plus, his presence has a lot of gravitas to it. And Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced the character in Rebels, is back for the live action. And he does a fantastic job with what he's given. However, I felt like the show was telling us how smart and decisive Thrawn is, rather than actually showing us. Like, there's a moment where he says, "I will not underestimate the Jedi. Never again." So you would think he would send everything to kill our characters. Instead, send 2 TIE fighters. Like, what? How is that going to be effective? Again, throughout this season, the story, the characters, everything about this show built Thrawn up as a Thanos-level threat. Yet the only thing he does is 1, he escapes, and 2, sends his forces to die so that they can distract the good guys. Like, yeah, no shit. Like, that's not really strategy, that's just obvious stuff. Now, at the end of the day, a story is supposed to say something, and there's usually a theme for Star Wars stories. Humbling beginnings turn into legends, wanting power can lead one to the darkness, father-son dynamics, survivor's guilt. Yet I never knew what this show was actually trying to say. Yes, you can make the argument that the show wanted to talk about Ahsoka moving forward, and in doing so leaving behind the shadow of Anakin, but you never really felt that. Episode 5, which was the episode featuring Hayden Christensen as Anakin, though I love the performance and just seeing Anakin back on screen, I had no idea what the episode was trying to say. It's extremely ambiguous, and so much to the point where it's just not really interesting. And after the episode, you never saw a change in Ahsoka's character following her near-death experience. There was so much missed opportunity in this show. Luckily, unlike, let's say, The Last Jedi, the show doesn't destroy Star Wars, but the executions and just the logic with its characters, it's things like that where you can't help but ask the question, why is the writing so messy? A lot of this feels like a rough draft that needed obvious edits. And because this is Lucasfilm, and it is, being funded by Disney, you have to ask the question, like, how the fuck did this happen? Now, I'm not trying to be negative when I say that, because I love Star Wars, because I see the potential of storytelling and the possibilities. It makes me sad to see that this sort of carelessness is in its telling. Now, hopefully moving forward, Lucasfilm can put more care in their product, and instead of utilizing a rough draft, maybe take a couple of runs going over it. That way you have yourselves a quality show. Overall, did I hate the series? No. I'm actually very excited to see what happens next. I just wish that the show was more polished, because I know in my heart that the story had potential. But yeah, as always, I'm your majestic sayer of words, SuperCliff, and if you guys are new to the channel, then do me a solid by smashing that like and subscribe button, and also the notification bell so that you'll never miss out on an upload, and so that you'll always be kept up to date with your favorite top tier Star Wars in a galaxy far, far away. Now tell me, what are your thoughts and opinions on Ahsoka? Did you guys like it? Did you not like it? What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comment section below. And until the next video, peace. Giggity goo.